Hello everyone, welcome back to your channel, Ultimate Audiobook. The first chapter is From the Beginning of Time, from 11th class NCERT History textbook. Early Societies. In this section, we will read about two themes relating to early societies. The first is about the beginnings of human existence from the remote past millions of years ago. You will learn how humans first emerged in Africa and how archaeologists have studied these early phases of history from remains of bones and stone tools. Archaeologists have made attempts to reconstruct the lives of early people, to find out about the shelters in which they lived, the food they eat by gathering plant produce and hunting animals, and the ways in which they expressed themselves. Other important developments include the use of fire and of language. And finally, you will see whether the lives of people who live by hunting and gathering today can help us to understand the past. The second theme deals with some of the earliest cities, those of Mesopotamia, present day Iraq. These cities developed around temples and were centers of long distance trade. Archaeological evidence, remains of old settlements, and an abundance of written material are used to reconstruct the lives of the different people who lived there. Craftspeople, scribes, laborers, priests, kings, and queens. You will notice how pastoral people played an important role in some of these towns. A question to think about is whether the many activities that went on in cities would have been possible if writing had not developed. You may wonder as to how people who, for millions of years, had lived in forests, in caves, or temporary shelters and rock shelters began to eventually live in villages and cities. Well, the story is a long one and is related to several developments that took place at least 5,000 years before the establishment of the first cities. One of the most far reaching changes was the gradual shift from nomadic life to settled agriculture, which began around 10,000 years ago. As you will see in Theme 1, prior to the adoption of agriculture, people had gathered plant produce as a source of food. Slowly, they learned more about different kinds of plants, where they grew, the seasons when they bore fruit, and so on. From this, they learned to grow plants. In West Asia, wheat and barley, peas, and various kinds of pulses were grown. In East and Southeast Asia, the crops that grew easily were millet and rice. Millet was also grown in Africa. Around the same time, people learned how to domesticate animals such as sheep, goat, cattle, pig, and donkey. Plant fibers such as cotton and flax and animal fibers such as wool were now woven into clothes. Somewhat later, about 5,000 years ago, domesticated animals such as cattle and donkeys were harnessed to plows and carts. These developments led to other changes as well. When people grew crops, they had to stay in the same place till the crops ripened. So, settled life became more common. And with that, people built more permanent structures in which to live. This was also the time when some communities learned how to make earthen pots. These were used to store grain and other produce, and to prepare and cook a variety of foods made from the new grains that were cultivated. In fact, a great deal of attention was given to processing foods to make them tasty and digestible. The way stone tools were made also changed. While earlier methods of making tools continued, Some tools and equipment were now smoothed and polished by an elaborate process of grinding. New equipment included mortars and pestles for processing and grinding grain, as well as stone axes and hoes, which were used to clear land for cultivation as well as for digging the earth to sow seeds. In some areas, people learned to tap the ores of metals such as copper and tin. Sometimes, copper ores were collected and used for their distinctive bluish green color. This prepared the way for the more extensive use of metal for jewelry and for tools subsequently. There was also growing familiarity with other kinds of produce from distant lands and seas. This included wood, stones, including precious and semi precious stones, metals and shale, and obsidian, hardened volcanic lava. Clearly, people were going from place to place carrying goods and ideas with them. With increasing trade, the growth of villages and towns, and the movements of people in place of the small communities of early people, there now grew small states. While these changes took place slowly, over several thousand years, the pace quickened with the growth of the first cities. Also, the changes had far reaching consequences. Some scholars have described this as a revolution, as the lives of people were probably transformed beyond recognition. Look out for continuities and changes as you explore these two contrasting themes in early history. Remember, too, that we have selected only some examples of early societies for detailed study. There were other kinds of early societies, including farming communities and pastoral peoples. And there were other peoples who were hunter gatherers as well as city dwellers apart from the examples selected. How to read timelines. You will find a timeline like this one in every section. Each of these will indicate some of the major processes and events in world history. As you study the timelines, remember several points. Processes through which ordinary women and men have shaped history are far more difficult to date than events such as a war between kings. Some dates may indicate the beginning of a process or when it reaches maturation. Historians are constantly revising dates in the light of new evidence or new ways of assessing old data. While we have divided the timelines on a geographical basis as a matter of convenience, actual historical developments often transcend these divisions. Also, there is a chronological overlap in historical processes. Only some landmarks in human history have been shown here. We have highlighted the processes dealt with in the themes that follow, which also have separate timelines. Wherever you see a star mark, you will also find an illustration related to the date along the column. Blank spaces don't mean that nothing was happening. Sometimes these indicate that we don't as yet know what was happening. You will be learning more about South Asian history in general and Indian history in particular next year. The dates selected for South Asia are only indicative of some of the developments in the subcontinent. Timeline 1, 6 million years ago to 1 BCE. This timeline focuses on the emergence of humans and the domestication of plants and animals. It highlights some major technological developments such as the use of fire, metals, plow agriculture, and the wheel. Other processes that are shown include the emergence of cities and the use of writing. You will also find mention of some of the earliest empires, a theme that will be developed in Timeline 2nd. Dates 6 million years ago to 5 million years ago In Africa, Australopithecus fossils, evidence of use of fire. Then 5 million to 1 million, 1.5 million. In Africa, Homo sapiens fossils. In Europe, evidence of use of fire. This information is mentioned in a tabular format. So there are 3 columns. In one, dates are there. Then second, Africa. Then in the third column, there is Europe. So 1.5 million to 50,000 to 30,000 timeline. In Europe, Homo sapiens fossils were found. From 30,000 to 10,000. In Africa, paintings in caves or rock shelters. In Europe, paintings in caves or rock shelters, especially France and Spain. From 8,000 to 6,000 BCE. In Africa, domestication of cattle and dogs. From 6,000 to 5,000. In Europe, cultivation of wheat and barley, particularly in Greece. From 4,000 to 3,000. In Africa, domestication of donkey, cultivation of millet, use of copper. In Europe, use of copper, Crete. From 3,000 to 2,000. In Africa, plough agriculture, first kingdoms, cities, pyramids, calendar, hieroglyphic script, writing on papyrus, particularly in Egypt. In Europe, domestication of horse, particularly in Eastern Europe. From 2000 to 1900. In Europe, cities, palaces, use of bronze, the potter's wheel, development of trade were found. Then from 1900 to 1600 BCE in Europe, development of a script. From 1600 to 1400 in Africa, use of glass bottles, mainly in Egypt. From 1400 to 1300, then 1300 to 1200, then 1200 to 1100, then 1100 to 1000. In this time period, in Europe, use of iron was found. From 1000 to 900, then 900 to 800 in Africa, city of Carthage established in North Africa by the Phoenicians from West Asia, growing trade around the Mediterranean. From 800 to 700 in Africa, use of iron in Sudan. In Europe, first Olympic Games in Greece, 776 BCE. From 700 to 600 in Africa, use of iron in Egypt. From 600 to 500 in Europe, use of coins in Greece, establishment of the Roman Republic, 510 BCE. From 500 to 400 in this timeline, in Africa, Persians invade Egypt, and in Europe, establishment of a democracy in Athens, Greece. From 400 to 300 in this timeline, in Africa, establishment of Alexandria, Egypt, 332 BCE, which becomes a major center of learning. In Europe, Alexander of Macedonia conquers Egypt and parts of West Asia, 336 to 323 BCE. Then 302 onwards, 1 BCE. Then our next columns consists of dates, Asia, South Asia. From 6 million years to 5 million BP. In Asia, use of fire. In South Asia, Stone Age site in Rivat. From 5 million to 1.5 million. Again, 1.5 million to 50,000 in this timeline. In Asia, Homo sapiens fossils, mainly in West Asia. From 50,000 to 30,000, nothing was found. Then 30,000 to 10,000. In Asia, domestication of dog, mainly in West Asia. In South Asia, cave paintings at Bhimbetka, Madhya Pradesh, Homo sapiens fossils, mainly in Sri Lanka. From 8,000 to 7,000 BCE, domestication of sheep and goat, cultivation of wheat and barley in West Asia. Then 7,000 to 6,000 BCE, domestication of pig and cattle in West and East Asia. In South Asia, early agricultural settlements, mainly in Baluchistan. In 6,000 to 5,000 timeline, domestication of chicken, cultivation of millet and yam in East Asia. From 5,000 to 4,000 BCE, in Asia, cultivation of cotton, mainly in South Asia, use of copper, West Asia. 4,000 to 3,000, use of the potter's wheel for transport. 3,600 BCE, writing. 3,200 BCE, in Mesopotamia, then use of bronze. In South Asia column, there is use of copper. 3,000 to 2,000 timeline, in Asia, plough agriculture, cities, Mesopotamia, silk making, China, domestication of horse, Central Asia, cultivation of rice, Southeast Asia. In South Asia, cities of the Harappan civilization, then use of script in 2700 BCE. Then 1900 in Asia, domestication of water buffalo in East Asia. Then 1900 to onwards 1600, 1900 to 1800, then 1800 to 1700, then 1700 to 1600 again, then 1600 to 1500 in this timeline. In Asia, cities, writing, kingdoms, Shang dynasty, use of bronze in China. Then 1500 to 1400, use of iron, West Asia. In South Asia, composition of the Rig Veda from 1400 to 1100. In 1200 to 1100 timeline, in Europe, use of iron, megaliths, Deccan and South India. From 1100 to 1000 BC, in Asia, domestication of the one-humped camel, Arabia. From 1000 to 900, then 900 to 800, 800 to 700, then 700 to 600, nothing was found. Then 600 to 500 in Asia, use of coins. In Turkey, Persian Empire 546 BCE with capital at Persepolis. Chinese philosopher Confucius in 551 BCE. In South Asia, cities and states in several areas, first coins, spread of Jainism and Buddhism. Then 500 to 400, nothing was found. Then 400 to 300 in this timeline in Europe, in South Asia, establishment of the Mauryan Empire, 321 BCE. From 300 to 200 in Asia, establishment of an empire in China, 221 BCE, beginning of the construction of the Great Wall. Then 200 to 100 BCE, then 100 to 1 BCE. Again, there is a tabular format in this. Dates, Americas, and Australia or Pacific Islands are mentioned. So from 6 million years to 50,000 million, sorry, from 6 million to 50,000 BP. In this timeline, in Americas, discovery of chilies. Then 50,000 to 30,000 BP. In this timeline, in Australia, Homo sapiens fossils earliest indications of sea faring. From 30,000 to 10,000 BP. In Americas, Homo sapiens fossils. In Australia, paintings. From 8,000 to 7,000 BCE. No evidence was there. From 7,000 to 6,000. In Americas, cultivation of squash. Then 6,000 to 5,000. Then 5,000 to 4,000 in America, cultivation of beans. In 4,000 to 3,000, cultivation of cotton and bottle gourd in America. From 3,000 to 2,000 in America, domestication of guinea pig, turkey, cultivation of maize. From 2000 to 1900, cultivation of potato, chili, cassava, peanut, domestication of llama and alpaca in America. Then 1900 to 1800, 1800 to 1700 till 1200. Then 1200 to 1100 in America, Olmec settlements around the Gulf of Mexico, early temples and sculpture. In Australia, settlements in Polynesia and Micronesia from 1100 to 1000. Then 1000 to 900 in this timeline in America, development of a hieroglyphic script. Then 900 to 800 till 1 BCE. Theme 1. From the beginning of time. This chapter traces the beginning of human existence. It was 5.6 million years ago, written as MYA, million years ago, that the first human-like creatures appeared on the Earth's surface. After this, several forms of humans emerged and then became extinct. Human beings resembling us, henceforth referred to as modern humans, originated about 160,000 years ago. During this long period of human history, people obtained food by either scavenging or hunting animals and gathering plant produce. They also learned how to make stone tools and to communicate with each other. Although other ways of obtaining food were adopted later, hunting gathering continued. Even today, there are hunter gatherer societies in some parts of the world. This makes us wonder whether the lifestyles of present day hunter gatherers can tell us anything about the past. Fossils are the remains or impressions of a very old plant, animal, or human which have turned into stone. These are often embedded in rock and are thus preserved for millions of years. Species is a group of organisms that can breed to produce fertile offspring. Members of one species cannot mate with those of other species to produce fertile offspring. Discoveries of human fossils, stone tools, and cave paintings help us to understand early human history. Each of these discoveries has a history of its own. Very often, when such finds were first made, most scholars refuse to accept that These fossils were the remains of early humans. They were also skeptical about the ability of early humans to make stone tools or paint. It was only over a period of time that the true significance of these finds were realized. Finds was realized. The evidence for human evolution comes from fossils of species of humans which have become extinct. Fossils can be dated either through direct chemical analysis or indirectly by dating the sediments in which they are buried. Once fossils are dated, a sequence of human evolution can be worked out. When such discoveries were first made, about 200 years ago, many scholars were often reluctant to accept that fossils and other finds, including stone tools and paintings, were actually connected with early forms of humans. This reluctance generally stemmed from their belief in the Old Testament of the Bible, according to which human origin was regarded as an act of creation by God. For instance, in August 1856, workmen who were quarrying for limestone in the Neander Valley, see map 2, page 18, a gorge near the German city of Dusseldorf, found a skull and some skeletal fragments. These were handed over to Karl Fulroth, a local schoolmaster and natural historian, who realized that they didn't belong to a modern human. He then made a plaster cast of the skull and sent it to Hermann Schaffhausen, a professor of anatomy at Bonn University. The following year, they jointly published a paper claiming that this skull represented a form of human that was extinct. At that time, scholars didn't accept this view and instead declared that the skull belonged to a person of more recent times. 24 November 1859, when Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species was published, marked a landmark in the study of evolution. All 1250 copies of the first print were sold out the same day. Darwin argued that humans had evolved from animals a long time ago. Activity 1. Most religions have stories about the creation of human beings, which often don't correspond with scientific discoveries. Find out about some of these and compare them with the history of human evolution as discussed in this chapter. The story of human evolution, the precursors of modern human beings. The differences that you notice in the skulls shown in the illustration are some of the changes that came about as a result of human evolution. The story of human evolution is enormously long and somewhat complicated. There are also many unanswered questions, and new data often lead to a revision and modification of earlier understandings. Let us look at some of the developments and their implications more closely. It is possible to trace these developments back to between 36 and 24 million years ago. We sometimes find it difficult to conceptualize such long spans of time. If you consider a page of your book to represent 10,000 years, in itself a vast span of time, 10 pages would represent 100,000 years and a hundred pages would equal 1 million years. To think of 36 million years, you would have to imagine a book 3,600 pages long. That was when primates, a category of mammals, emerged in Asia and Africa. Subsequently, by about 24 million years, there emerged a subgroup amongst primates called hominoids. This included apes, and much later, about 5.6 million years ago, we find evidence of the first hominids. Primates are a subgroup of a larger group of mammals. They include monkeys, apes, and humans. They have body hair, a relatively long gestation period following birth, mammary glands, different types of teeth, and the ability to maintain a constant body temperature. While hominids have evolved from hominoids and share certain common features, there are major differences as well. Hominoids have a smaller brain than hominids. They are quadrupeds walking on all fours but with flexible forelimbs. Hominids, by contrast, have an upright posture and bipedal locomotion, walking on 2 feet. There are also marked differences in the hand, which enables the making and use of tools. We will examine the kinds of tools made and their significance more closely later. Two lines of evidence suggest an African origin for hominids. First, it is the group of African apes that are most closely related to hominids. Second, the earliest hominid fossils, which belong to the genus Australopithecus, have been found in East Africa and date back to about 5.6 million years ago. In contrast, fossils found outside Africa are no older than 1.8 million years. Hominids belong to a family known as Hominidae, which includes all forms of human beings. The distinctive characteristics of hominids include a large brain size, upright posture, bipedal locomotion, and specialization of the hand. Hominids are further subdivided into branches known as genus, of which Australopithecus and Homo are important. Each of these, in turn, includes several species. The major differences between Australopithecus and Homo relate to brain size, jaws, and teeth. The former has a smaller brain size, heavier jaws, and larger teeth than the latter. Virtually all the names given by scientists to species are derived from Latin and Greek words. For instance, the name Australopithecus comes from a Latin word, austral, meaning southern, and a Greek word, pithekos, meaning ape. The name was given because this earliest form of humans still retained many features of an ape, such as a relatively small brain size in comparison to Homo, large back teeth, and limited dexterity of the hands. Upright walking was also restricted as they still spent a lot of time on trees. They retained characteristics. They retained characteristics such as long forelimbs, curved hand and foot bones, and mobile ankle joints suited to life on trees. Over time, as tool making and long distance walking increased, many human characteristics also developed. Hominoids are different form of monkeys in a number of ways. They have a larger body and don't have a tail. Besides, there is a longer period of infant development and dependency amongst hominoids. The remains of early humans have been classified into different species. These are often distinguished from one another on the basis of differences in bone structure. For instance, species of early humans are differentiated in terms of their skull size and distinctive jaws. These characteristics may have evolved due to what has been called the positive feedback mechanism. For example, bipedalism enabled hands to be freed for carrying infants or objects. In turn, as hands were used more and more, upright walking gradually became more efficient. Apart from the advantage of freeing hands for various uses, far less energy is consumed while walking as compared to the movement of a quadruped. However, the advantage in terms of saving energy is reversed while running. There is indirect evidence of bipedalism as early as 3.6 million years ago. This comes from the fossilized hominid footprints at Letoli, Tanzania. Fossil limb bones fossil limb bones recovered from Hadar, Ethiopia provide more direct evidence of bipedalism. Around 2.5 million years ago, with the onset of a phase of glaciation or an ice age, when large parts of the earth were covered with snow, there were major changes in climate and vegetation. Due to the reduction in temperatures as well as rainfall, grassland areas expanded at the expense of forests, leading to the gradual extinction of the early forms of Australopithecus that were adapted to forests and the replacement by species that were better adapted to the drier conditions. Among these were the earliest representatives of the genus Homo. Homo is a Latin word meaning man, although there were women as well. Scientists distinguish among several types of Homo. The names assigned to this species are derived from what are regarded as their typical characteristics. So, fossils are classified as Homo habilis, the toolmaker, Homo erectus, the upright man, the Homo and Homo sapiens, the user thinking man. Fossils of Homo habilis have been discovered at Omo in Ethiopia and at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. The earliest fossils of Homo erectus have been found both in Africa and Asia. Kubifora and West Turkana, Kenya, Mojoketo and Sangiran, Java. As the finds in Asia belong to a later date than those in Africa, it is likely that hominids migrated from East Africa to southern and northern Africa, to southern and northeastern Asia, and perhaps to Europe, sometime between 2 and 1.5 million years ago. This species survived for nearly a million years. In some instances, the names for fossils are derived from the places where the first fossils of a particular type were found. So, fossils found in Heidelberg, a city in Germany, were called Homo heidelbergensis, while those found in the Neander Valley were categorized as Homo neanderthalensis. The earliest fossils from Europe are of Homo heidelbergensis and Homo neanderthalensis. Both belong to the species of archaic, that is old, Homo sapiens. The fossils of Homo heidelbergensis have a wide distribution, having been found in Africa, Asia, and Europe. The Neanderthals occupied Europe and Western and Central Asia from roughly 130,000 to 35,000 years ago. This disappeared They disappeared abruptly in Western Europe around 35,000 years ago. In general, compared with Australopithecus, Homo have a larger brain, jaws with a reduced outward protrusion and smaller teeth. An increase in brain size is associated with more intelligence and a better memory. The changes in the jaws and teeth were probably related to differences in dietary habits. People of the world, 5 to 1 million years ago. Sub-Saharan Africa, Australopithecus, early Homo erectus were found from 1 million years to 40,000 years ago in Africa, Asia, and Europe in mid latitudes. Homo erectus, archaic Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Homo sapiens sapiens, or modern humans were found. 45,000 years ago in Australia, modern humans. Then 40,000 years ago to present, in Europe in high latitudes and Asia Pacific islands, late Neanderthals, modern humans. Also in North and South America in deserts, rainforests. Activity 2. Plot the changes indicated in the chart above on an outline map of the world. Use different colors for the 4 time brackets. List the continents where you use a single color, second 2 colors, third more than 2 colors. The story of human evolution, modern human beings. If you look at this chart, you will notice that some of the earliest evidence for Homo sapiens has been found in different parts of Africa. This raises the question of the center of human origin. Was there a single center or were there several? The issue of the place of origin of modern humans has been much debated. Two totally divergent views have been expounded, one advocating the regional continuity model with multiple regions of origin, the other the replacement model with a single origin in Africa. According to the regional continuity model, the archaic Homo sapiens in different regions gradually evolved at different rates into modern humans, and hence the variation in the first appearance of modern humans in different parts of the world. The argument is based on the regional differences in the features of present day humans. According to those who advocate this view, these dissimilarities are due to differences between the pre existing Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis populations that occupy the same regions. The replacement and regional continuity models. The replacement model visualizes the complete replacement everywhere of all older forms of humans with modern humans. In support of this view is the evidence of the genetic and anatomical homogeneity of modern humans. Those who suggest this argue that the enormous similarity amongst modern humans is due to their descent from a population that originated in a single region, which is Africa. The evidence of the earliest fossils of modern humans from Umu in Ethiopia also supports the replacement model. Scholars who hold this view suggest that the physical differences observed today among modern humans are the result of adaptation over a span of thousands of years by populations who migrated to the particular regions where they finally settled down. Early humans' ways of obtaining food. So far, we have been considering the evidence of skeletal remains and seeing how these have been used to reconstruct the histories of the movements of peoples across continents. But there are other more routine aspects of human life as well. Let us see how this can be studied. Early humans would have obtained food through a number of ways, such as gathering, hunting, scavenging, and fishing. Gathering would involve collecting plant foods such as seeds, nuts, berries, fruits, and tubers. That gathering was practiced is generally assumed rather than conclusively established, as there is very little direct evidence for it. While we get a fair amount of fossil bones, fossilized plant remains are relatively rare. The only other way of getting information about plant intake would be if plant remains were accidentally burnt. This process results in carbonization. In this form, organic matter is preserved for a long span of time. However, so far archaeologists have not found much evidence of carbonized seeds for this very early period. In recent years, the term hunting has been under discussion by scholars. Increasingly, it is being suggested that the early hominids scavenged or foraged for meat and marrow from the carcasses of animals that had died naturally or had been killed by other predators. Foraging means to search for food. It is equally possible that small mammals such as rodents, birds, and their eggs, reptiles, and even insects such as termites were eaten by early hominids. Hunting probably began later, about 500,000 years ago. The earliest clear evidence for the deliberate planned hunting and butchery of large mammals comes from two sites: Boxgrove in southern England 500,000 years ago and Schöningen in Germany 400,000 years ago. Fishing was also important, as is evident from the discovery of fish bones at different sites. From about 35,000 years ago, there is evidence of planned hunting from some European sites. Some sites, such as Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, which was near a river, seem to have been deliberately chosen by early people. Herds of migratory animals such as reindeer and horse probably crossed the river during their autumn and spring migrations and were killed on a large scale. The choice of such sites indicates that people knew about the movement of these animals and also about the means of killing large numbers of animals quickly. Did men and women have different roles in gathering, scavenging, hunting, and fishing? We don't really know. Today we find societies that live by hunting and gathering, where women and men undertake a range of different activities. But as we will see later in the chapter, it is not always possible to suggest parallels with the past. Early humans, from trees to caves and open air sites. We are on surer ground when we try to reconstruct the evidence for patterns of residence. One way of doing this is by plotting the distribution of artifacts. For example, thousands of flake tools and hand axes have been excavated at Kilombe and Olorgesailie in Kenya. These finds are dated between 700,000 and 500,000 years ago. How did these tools accumulate in one place? It is possible that some places where food resources were it is possible that some places where food resources were abundant were visited repeatedly. In such areas, people would tend to leave behind traces of their activities and presence, including artifacts. The deposited artifacts would appear as patches on the landscape. The places that were less frequently visited would have fewer artifacts, which may have been scattered over the surface. It is also important to remember that the same locations could have been shared by hominids, other primates, and carnivores. Artifacts are objects that are made by human beings. The term can refer to a wide range of things: tools, paintings, sculpture, engravings. Between 400,000 and 125,000 years ago, caves and open air sites began to be used. Evidence for this comes from sites in Europe, in the Lazarette cave in southern France. A 12 into 4-meter shelter was built against the cave wall. Inside it were two huts and evidence of different food sources: fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, bird eggs, and freshwater fish, trout, perch, and carp. At another site, Terra Amata on the coast of southern France, flimsy shelters with roofs of wood and grasses were built for short-term seasonal visits. Pieces of baked clay and burnt bone, along with stone tools dated between 1.4 and 1 million years ago, have been found at Chesowanja, Kenya, and Swartkrans, South Africa, where this is the result of a natural bushfire or volcanic eruption, or were they produced through the deliberate controlled use of fire? We don't really know. Hearths, on the other hand, are indications of the controlled use of fire. This had several advantages. Fire provided warmth and light inside caves and could be used for cooking. Besides, fire was used to harden wood, as for instance, the tip of the spear. The use of heat also facilitated the flaking of tools. As important, fire could be used to scare away dangerous animals. Early humans making tools. To start with, it is useful to remember that the use of tools and tool making are not confined to humans. Birds are known to make objects to assist them with feeding, hygiene, and social encounters. And while foraging for food, some chimpanzees use tools that they have made. However, there are some features of human tool making that are not known among apes. As we have seen, certain anatomical and neurological related to the nervous system adaptations have led to the skilled use of hands, probably due to the important role of tools in human lives. Moreover, the ways in which humans use and make tools often require greater memory and complex organizational skills, both of which are absent in apes. The earliest evidence for the making and use of stone tools comes from sites in Ethiopia and Kenya. It is likely that the earliest stone tool makers were the Australopithecus. As in the case of other activities, we don't know whether tool making was done by men or women or both. It is possible that stone tool makers were both women and men. Women in particular may have made and used tools to obtain food for themselves as well as to sustain their children after winning. About 35,000 years ago, improvements in the techniques for killing animals are evident from the appearance of new kinds of tools such as spear throwers and the bow and arrow. The meat thus obtained was probably processed by removing the bones, followed by drying, smoking, and storage. Thus, food could be stored for later consumption. There were other changes, such as the trapping of fur bearing animals to use the fur for clothing and the invention of sewing needles. The earliest evidence of sewn clothing comes from about 21,000 years ago. Besides, with the introduction of the punch blade technique to make small chisel like tools, it was now possible to make engravings on bone, antler, ivory, or wood. Besides, with the introduction of the punch blade technique to make small chisel like tools, it was now possible to make engravings on bone, antler, ivory, or wood. Modes of communication, language, and art. Among living beings, it is humans alone that Among living beings, it is humans alone that have a language. There are several views on language development. First one, that hominid language involved gestures or hand movements. Second, that spoken language was preceded by vocal but non-verbal communication such as singing or humming. Third, that human speech probably began with calls like the ones that have been observed among primates. Humans may have possessed a small number of speech sounds in the initial stage. Gradually, these may have developed into language. When did spoken language emerge? It has been suggested that the brain of Homo habilis had certain features which would have made it possible for them to speak. Thus, language may have developed as early as 2 million years ago. The evolution of the vocal tract was equally important. This occurred around 200,000 years ago. It is more specifically associated with modern humans. A third suggestion is that language developed around the same time as art, that is, around 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. The development of spoken English has been, sorry, the development of spoken language has been seen as closely connected with art, since both are media for communication. Hundreds of paintings of animals, drawn between 30,000 to 12,000 years ago, have been discovered in the caves of Lascaux and Chauvet, both in France, and Altamira in Spain. These include depictions of bison, horses, ibex, deer, mammoths, rhinos, lions, bears, panthers, hyenas, and owls. More questions have been raised and answered regarding these paintings. For example, why do some areas of caves have paintings and not others? Why were some animals painted and not others? Why were men painted both individually and in groups, whereas women women were depicted only in groups? Why were men painted near animals but never women? Why were groups of animals painted in the sections of caves where sounds carried well? Several explanations have been offered. One is that because of the importance of hunting, the paintings of animals were associated with ritual and magic. The act of painting could have been a ritual to ensure a successful hunt. Another explanation offered is that these caves were possibly meeting places for small groups of people or locations for group activities. These groups could share hunting techniques and knowledge, while paintings and engravings served as the media for passing information from one generation to the next. The above account of early societies has been based on archaeological evidence. Clearly, there is much that we still don't know. As mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, hunter gatherer societies exist even today. Can one learn anything about past societies from present day hunter gatherers? This is a question we will address in the next section. Next section. Early encounters with hunter gatherers in Africa. The following is an account by a member of an African pastoral group about its initial contact in 1870 with the Kungsan, a hunter gatherer society living in the Kalahari Desert. When we first came into this area, all we saw were strange footprints in the sand. We wondered what kind of people these were. They were very afraid of us and would hide whenever we came around. We found their villages, but they were always empty because as soon as they saw strangers coming, they would scatter and hide in the bush. We said, "Oh, this is good. These people are afraid of us. They are weak and we can easily rule over them." So we just ruled them. There was no killing or fighting. We will read more about encounters with hunter gatherers in themes 8 and 10. Anthropology is a discipline that studies human culture and evolutionary aspects of human biology. Activity 3. Why do the Hadja not assert rights over land and its resources? Why do the size and location of camps keep changing from season to season? Why is there never any shortage of food even in times of drought? Can you name any such hunter gatherer societies in India today? Hunter gatherer societies from the present to the past. As our knowledge of present day hunter gatherers increased through studies by anthropologists, a question that began to be posed was whether the information about living hunters and gatherers could be used to understand past societies. Currently, there are two opposing views on this issue. Ethnography is the study of contemporary ethnic groups. It includes an examination of their modes of livelihood, technology, gender roles, rituals, political institutions, and social customs. On one side are scholars who have directly applied specific data from present day hunter gatherer societies to interpret the archaeological remains of the past. For example, some archaeologists have suggested that the hominid sites dated to 2 million years ago along the margins of Lake Turkana could have been dry season camps of early humans. Because such a practice has been observed among the Hadza and the Kungsan. On the other side are scholars who feel that ethnographic data cannot be used for understanding past societies as the two are totally different. For instance, present day hunter gatherer societies pursue Present day hunter gatherer societies pursue several other economic activities along with hunting and gathering. These include engaging in exchange and trade in minor forest produce or working as paid laborers in the fields of neighboring farmers. Moreover, these societies are totally marginalized in all senses geographically, politically, and socially. The conditions in which they live are very different from those of early humans. Another problem is that there is tremendous variation amongst living hunter gatherer societies. There are conflicting data on many issues such as the relative importance of hunting and gathering, group sizes, or the movement from place to place. Also, there is little consensus regarding the division of labor in food procurement. Although today generally women gather and men hunt, there are societies where both women and men hunt and gather and make tools. In any case, the important role of women in contributing to the food supply in such societies cannot be denied. It is perhaps this factor that ensures a relatively equal role for both women and men in present day hunter gatherer societies, although there are variations. While this may be the case today, it is difficult to make any such inference for the past. Epilogue. For several million years, humans lived by hunting wild animals and gathering wild plants. Then, between 10,000 and 4,500 years ago, people in different parts of the world learned to domesticate certain plants and animals. Activity 4. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of using ethnographic accounts to reconstruct the lives of the earliest peoples? Epilogue continued. This led to the development of farming and pastoralism as a way of life. The shift from foraging to farming was a major turning point in human history. Why did this change take place at this point of time? The last ice age came to an end about 13,000 years ago, and with that, warmer, wetter conditions prevailed. As a result, conditions were favorable for the growth of grasses sorry, such as wild barley and wheat. At the same time, as open forests and grasslands expanded, the population of certain animal species such as wild sheep, goat, cattle, pig, and donkey increased. What we find is that human societies began to gradually prefer areas that had an abundance of wild grasses and animals. Now, relatively large permanent communities occupied such areas for most parts of the year, with some areas being clearly preferred, or pressure may have built up to increase the food supply. This may have triggered the process of domestication of certain plants and animals. It is likely that a combination of factors, which included climatic change, population pressure, a greater reliance on and knowledge of a few species of plants, such as wheat, barley, rice, and millet, and animals such as sheep, goat, cattle, donkey, and pig, played a role in this transformation. One such area where farming and pastoralism began around 10,000 years ago was the Fertile Crescent, extending from the Mediterranean coast to the Zagros Mountains in Iran. With the introduction of agriculture, more people began to stay in one place for even longer periods than they had done before. Thus, permanent houses began to be built of mud bricks, and even stone. These are some of the earliest villages known to archaeologists. Farming and pastoralism led to the introduction of many other changes, such as the making of pots in which to store grain and other produce and to cook food. Besides, new kinds of stone tools came into use. Other new tools, such as the plow, were used in agriculture. Gradually, people became familiar with metals such as copper and tin. The wheel, important for both pot making and transportation, came into use. About 5,000 years ago, even larger concentrations of people began to live together in cities. Why did this happen? And what are the differences between cities and other settlements? Look out for answers to these and other questions in Theme 2. Exercises. Answer in brief. First question. Look at the diagram showing the positive feedback mechanism on page 13. Can you list the inputs that went into tool making? What were the processes that were strengthened by tool making? Second, humans and mammals such as monkeys and apes have certain similarities in behavior and anatomy. This indicates that humans possibly evolved from apes. List these resemblances in two columns under the headings of behavior and anatomy. Are there any differences that you think are noteworthy? Third, discuss the arguments advanced in favor of the regional continuity model of human origins. Do you think it provides a convincing explanation of the archaeological evidence? Give reasons for your answer. Which of the following do you think is best documented in the archaeological record? Gathering, tool making, the use of fire. Answer in a short essay. Fifth question, discuss the extent to which hunting and constructing shelters would have been facilitated by the use of language. What other modes of communication could have been used for these activities? Sixth, choose any two developments, each from timelines 1 and 2, at the end of the chapter and indicate why you think these are significant. So, we have come to an end of our session. I hope this audio session will really help you. If you like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. I'll meet you in a new session. Till then, bye bye everyone.